So if you have an opportunity to go to a cool Toronto tournament and you can afford to do that and it's not a pain in your ass, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you think I need to do this so that at 11 my kid has the best chance at being scouted or noticed, or it's just so irrelevant at 11, it doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter.
I'll start getting into some of these questions. So,
Sure.
So the way that I want to kind of approach this is, let me turn my phone off too. The way that I kind of want to approach the questions that, you know, I'm actually discussing with you, like as a, you know, guy that runs the academy or coach, whatever. I want to come from the perspective of, like, what should parents actually care about? Mm-hmm. Like, what is going to move the needle down the road if they want not even necessarily a successful hockey player or athlete, but like if they want to raise a successful human, and then maybe the successful athlete and hockey player is secondary, and then we could talk about also like vice versa. Like, what do you do if you legitimately want to have the best player on the team, if you want to see your kid playing triple, make it to juniors, make it to the O, or whatever, and then eventually maybe the show? Like, what are those steps? So I want to ask you the question. Like, so I'll preface this by saying, can you break down the skills and strategies that make an actual successful hockey player from a young age? Like, what does U8 player, a U8, U9, say like anything under 10, what actually matters for that kid to be developing and focusing on? Or what should the parents focus on in order to help develop the player the most effectively that they can?
Yeah. So the first preface for the answers to these questions is there is not an answer, because if there was an answer,
there's not one right answer.
There's not a study. There's not, like, no one is researching this. Like, so this is all just my opinions based on my experience.
And that's exactly I love that. I love that answer, or prefacing this by saying that, because that is also important, that you're actually not coming from your opinion necessarily. Well, you're coming from your experience. Your opinion is based off of your personal experience.
An informed opinion
of over a decade of coaching.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So to back up, like, I've been doing this. I started in a coaching role when I was about 16, and that was with young kids learning to skate in that kind of environment. And now it's been coming up, playing on teams, coaching teams, and in some kind of coaching role, whether it's on ice, off ice, nutrition development, classroom setting, whatever. So I've touched a lot of these different things. When it comes to the hockey development, if we have to be very specific about the age. So if we're saying 10 and under, in my opinion, and this is just from what I've seen, what I've heard.
Where do you break that up then? Like, what are the tranches of ages?
The line for me is always puberty. The line is always puberty. So
and where do you see that? Like, I have an idea of what age would be puberty, but what have you seen that's that line there? Like, what is that age?
I think it's that 13 to 15.
Okay.
That's when the transition happens.
Okay.
That's when it starts to happen. And so that's still not to say it's going to be one way or the other, because you can find the late story of the guy who was 17 and then all of a sudden got good out of nowhere, and vice versa. Like I said, there's all kinds of different ways.
Gotcha.
If I say generally speaking, for most cases, when you're under 13 years old, the most important thing is that your kid just likes to play, and you are seeing that they want to do things on their own.
Got it.
That is the number one thing. So if they are not doing things on their own, and you have to keep giving them the pat on the ass to go do something, then that's already a little bit of an indicator. Kids can change.
Got it. Kids
might, when they're 13, say, okay, I actually want to do this now, and now I'm going to pick it up. But regardless, that's kind of what you're looking for.
Interesting.
So if they seem to be self-driving, they want to do things on their own, even when they're young, that's the fun that they choose to participate in, then that is your number one.
Got it.
Because it doesn't matter how good they are. It doesn't matter that they're doing XYZ skills thing, skating thing. It doesn't matter. Like, I have 9-year-olds that still drag their feet and go on to be great skaters. And I have beautiful skaters who hit puberty and grow 2 feet, and all of a sudden they're Bambi because they have to relearn their body proportions.
Interesting.
You know? Okay. So if we're specifying for under, let's say 10, I would even say under 13. That's my biggest thing.
Interesting.
So they have to be doing it. It can't be mom and dad. Now, there are signs that you can see. Like if your kid is scoring 47 goals in the first 10 games of the season, it's like, okay, that's good.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But to your kind of greater point about what is this for, I think until the kid is into puberty now, your mindset as a parent should just be like, let the kid play, let him enjoy it, give him as much opportunity as we can afford, as we logistically can handle, as much as we enjoy, and then let them just play. And that means if they want to do the extra thing, then they can. If it fits in with your schedule and with your finances and whatever, then they can do that. There's no problem.
Interesting.
But if they aren't asking or they don't want to, then maybe that's an indicator.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you never encourage them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you just let them pick and they're like, you're the boss, like you're still
Yeah.
mom and dad. But if you say, hey, like, you have to pick something to do. Do you want to go play hockey or do you want to go play baseball?
Yeah.
What do they say?
Yeah.
And for a lot of kids, sometimes it'll be both. Sometimes it'll be,
yeah.
I want to play baseball today, then I want to play. So
Yeah.
you can't be that serious is my
Yeah.
point, I guess. And I find with the younger kids, it's almost like it's more serious. It gets more, it's
Yeah.
more serious. People
Is
are
that
more,
right?
that's what I see. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people, they can't zoom out and see how big the hockey landscape actually is. It's like
Interesting.
when you're 16 and you enter the OHL draft, for example, you've just jumped into a way bigger pool. So if
Gotcha.
you're the best kid in Windsor, Essex County for us, when you jump up and now you're dealing with all of Ontario, that's way bigger.
Yeah.
When you take the next step, it's all of Canada, that's way bigger. The
Yeah.
whole world, that's way bigger. And I don't think people understand how vast that is because you can
Yeah.
get caught up in your little world thinking that all these things are super significant, only to realize as soon as that 16-year-old age, it happens every year. It just kids drop like flies right after
Really?
the draft. That's what happens, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting, man. I do see that. I do see that quite a bit being involved in it where, man, do people take it serious at like even like U8, U9
Mm-hmm.
and it's unbelievable. And then you go up to the GTA and then like the pool
Mayhem.
of play. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. It's actually unbelievable.
It is.
You know, and then
is.
you're just getting slaughtered.
And
Just
now
slaughtered.
that doesn't mean don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
That's also like a lot of times, like I said, I do this thing where I'm always like kind of on both sides
Mm-hmm.
of every question because there isn't a clear answer, and there's a balance. Like I remember reading a book. Jocko Willink's a guy I like. I don't know if you know Jocko.
Yep.
So he wrote Dichotomy of Leadership, and it's kind of like the balance of being a leader. You kind of have to play both sides. So for you, I mean, you would know this. You run a company. You can't be the dictator all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes you have to listen to the guy that's below you or whatever, right? And that kind of thing happens as a parent. It's the same thing. Everything is the same. It's the same kind of principles, you
Yeah.
know. So as mom and dad, you don't want to not care. So if you have an opportunity to go to a cool Toronto tournament and you can afford to do that and it's not a pain in your ass, then that's fine. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But if you think I need to do this so that at 11, my kid has the best chance at being scouted or noticed, or it's just so irrelevant at 11. It
Is that
doesn't
right,
matter,
eh?
right? It really
Wow.
doesn't matter, you know?
That's so interesting. So let's take this from a different perspective. So you're 9 years old. Your kids lighten up the local scene.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid likes it. You know, at the on his own time, he's playing mini sticks. He's
Yep.
maybe shooting pucks or balls outside at a net on the driveway, whatever. What skills at that age would you say are the most important fundamentally to develop and encourage?
Yeah. I think in today's game, value is always going to be on skating first.
So become a good skater.
Yeah, you want to become a good skater, but a lot of times you don't have that much control over that.
Okay.
So I find like it's funny because we have this skating treadmill that we use, and sometimes I'll have a 7-year-old jump on, and they're just a beautiful skater. Like, tell me who taught them that, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Whereas I'll get the other 7-year-old who doesn't understand how to bend his knees at all,
Yeah.
or they can't use their hips at all. They don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm tentative even saying that because it's like some kids will just get it and some won't. So if your kid's not a great skater, doesn't mean it's over and they
Yeah.
can't do it if they're not a good skater when they're 9, you know? So it's one of those tricky kind of questions is you have to focus on something. And to me, I say, do a little bit of everything.
Gotcha.
Like they need to work on their skating. They need to work on their stick handling. They need to work on their shooting. They need to work on their passing. All that stuff they need to work on.
Gotcha.
And I think at that age, it should just be that. It should be the fundamental skills. Like I have people reach out to me sometimes about their 10-year-old. It's like they lack hockey IQ. And it's like, well, maybe they do, but maybe they're also 10 and they're thinking about what they did at school today.
Yeah.
They're just not that serious fundamentally.
Gotcha. I see.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's why I always start with like foundational things. And then as kids start to get older, as the parent, a good skill, and you can even do this when they're younger. It doesn't have to be when they're older, but it's just to ask questions. Like when they're playing the game and they come out, instead of telling them, hey, you should have done this, this, and this. It's like, how come you did this? Like, what were you thinking in this situation? And let them think about what they're doing.
Interesting.
And I think that is the best way for kids to learn is you have to let them lead and let them think. And even if you ask them leading questions, as parents do, that's okay. But make them think about the things that they're doing. And I find this all the time with kids at the academy. Young kids will come to me. And I was just asking a kid the other day, his teammates were saying, oh, he had a great game. And I'm like, oh, like, why'd you have a great game? And his answer is, I don't know. And I'm like, that's not a good answer.
Yeah.
That's not a good answer.
Yeah, think about what you did.
They've never been forced to think. They're not
Gotcha.
being forced to think. And I think that's where the learning happens, you know, so they can go to their camps and do their skills and get their foundations, learn their fundamentals. And then as parents, you can ask questions.
Gotcha.
Ask them questions, and that's where they'll start to learn the game when they're young like that, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting, man. Yeah, I'll be up in the stands and I hear a lot of parents talking about or like screaming or whatever, and it's like them screaming about telling the kids on the ice to make these plays, and I'm just like, man, you guys they're not going to do that.
Right.
They're 9. They don't understand what you're even saying.
Yeah.
Like it's too complicated, you know. And you know, I find from a perspective of, you know, I've loosely helped, because coaching isn't the right word, to be honest with you. But I've always noticed, like when a kid's just playing their heart out there and they're just like everywhere, it moves the needle for them.
Oh yeah,
like you know what
sure.
I mean. At the end of the day, even if they're sloppy, if they're just covering more ground, it helps.
Yeah, and
you know?
it's okay. And
Yeah.
this is what I have been saying of late about parents. This is something I've come to realize because it's happened to me. I remember at the start of this season, or I guess start of this year, when we started with the academy, I do these nutrition talks with the kids. And even with the high school kids, when I'm explaining things to them, I will just take for granted that they know words that I'm using. They understand vocabulary. So I'll say like something like carbohydrate. I think everyone knows what that means. They don't know what it means. They've never heard this word before. And these are high school kids.
Oh, wow.
And so what I think as adults we can do is we impose our mature mind on the youth, and we think that they maybe know more than they do, or they understand more than they do.
Yeah.
And they really don't.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me where I'll say a term to them. Nutrition is an easy example because there's so many terms you can use.
Yeah.
And I'll ask them, do you know what this means? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And a bunch of them will put their hand up, and then I'll ask them, can you explain what this means? And then nobody can explain what the word means. So they don't really understand. So even on the ice, if you say, hey, you have to make sure you forecheck.
Yeah.
What if a 10-year-old doesn't know what forecheck means?
Yeah.
You know, or what if they get it means go after the puck, but they don't know that it means when it's in the corner or when you're the first person there, or so we have to be clear about that kind of messaging as parents. And that's where the patience comes in as a coach and as a parent. Like you can't expect too much.
Yeah.
Because they are just trying to figure it out. They don't even know the sentences you're saying, right?
Yeah. That's so interesting. I can't stop thinking about that one comment that I heard that one guy say to float it through the slot and the kid was in the corner, and I'm like, buddy, like, what are you even talking about? You know, I can't stop thinking about that. It was the funniest comment I ever heard at a game. Float it through the slot.
Yeah.
The kid can't even shoot, let alone float it.
Yeah. To say everyone's the same, man. Everyone's a really good skater. Can shoot the puck. Everybody's a good passer. Everybody's in great shape. There's been so much development from the nutrition side and the training side and the fundamental skills, and there's always skills camps for kids and the development and all this. It's like, you know what? It's nice to have somebody just go crack someone once in a while. You know?
Yeah.
And that is still an element of what makes the game interesting. And that's what's going to start to sell the game, in my opinion, down the road. It's going to be those guys that come in and have a little bit of that, you know?
How has the style of play in hockey evolved over the years, and where do you see it going in the future?
I love this question.
Yeah,
Great question.
This is such an interesting, especially
Yeah.
with like, with Matt Rempe coming in and kind of disrupting
Yes.
a little bit of the narrative
Yes,
here.
right.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of interested in seeing your opinion on this.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so everybody, I guess, as parents, because if that's who primarily will hear this, you can remember the 80s and 90s when it was rough and tough. Before that, even more so.
Yeah.
But 80s and 90s, and there's been some significant rule changes that have alleviated some of that. So I still remember as a kid playing early AAA when you were still allowed to kind of hook guys. There was still a 2-line pass. Those things are still in the game.
Yeah.
I remember that when I was a kid, and then I remember that being taken out.
Yeah.
So there's things like that changed the game, but it's fundamentally evolved from a rough and tough to a skill game, and they've changed rules to on purpose so that the skill shines, goals are scored, it's more exciting, it's more fun to watch.
Gotcha.
So that's where it's been going up until, I would say, maybe the last 3-4 years, where I'm starting to see, and this is from talking with scouts and coaches and people that are actually in the hockey landscape scouting players.
Okay.
They're starting to find guys that have that little bit of jam to them still.
Interesting. Okay.
And this is where, I guess, kind of to
why?
So this is it. If you think of, let's say, we were talking about this the other day, and I don't know if people remember Denny Savard when he played, and he was a game changer because it was from rough and tough. You had maybe the third and fourth line of each team could barely skate, and everyone's fighting, and it's chopping and whacking and hooking and grabbing and all this. And then you get Denny Savard that comes in, and it's like, holy, like nobody plays like this guy. He can skate, he can spin on a dime, he's making all the moves, he's silky smooth, and that was rare. And that was what made him so special. And I think since, let's say, the early 2000s, it's been transitioning to where the skill is the dominant part of the game, where the toughness has almost entirely been eliminated.
Yeah.
And you see this even at junior levels. Like, they've taken really, really strict stances on fighting in a lot of junior leagues, which for me, I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think it should go back to being full goon squad league.
Yeah.
Like, there should be some rules about it.
Yeah.
But when I talk and hear from scouts and coaches, this would be particularly for OHL because we're in Ontario. They're looking for guys that bring an element of that toughness back. And this is where you see the Ryan Reeves or these new guys coming in, these young guys coming in that have a little itch to get some fighting in. And now you're seeing the same reaction from the fans as they had with Denny Savard, but it's with these guys. It's like, holy cow, like, look at this. We haven't seen this in forever. And so my opinion, just to answer your question, is that it's starting to go back a bit where we still need some of that.
Yeah.
And I bring this even down because everyone follows obviously what the NHL does, and you look at the teams that win the cup, and normally the following years everyone's kind of following the team that won the cup and their style of play.
Interesting.
And when I look down the ranks now, or I go to watch junior games, kids are just fundamentally not tough. They just aren't. And I think it's because it's not taught, it's not harped on, it's not engaged with, and you can chalk it up to soft society or whatever you want to talk about for reasons for that, but the bottom line is it's lacking, and there's an element of resilience that's lacking. There's an element of toughness that's lacking. And
Interesting. So you actually see it.
I see it every day. I see it every
Really?
day.
Yeah.
I see it with my team. I see it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I don't blame the kids. Again, like, I don't blame the kids. It's not their fault.
It's a product of their environment, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so whoever,
or they're a product of their environment.
oh yeah, and whoever can get, like, it's the easiest time ever to be an ass kicker, man.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
It's, if you just have a little bit of spice to you,
Yeah.
you're gonna have such a quality that people cherish and people are after, because
Is that right?
it's just not there.
So you're seeing the need for it, even from a scouting perspective.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
so interesting,
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
That is so interesting.
And that's the way we talk about it, is like guys being a bucket of vanilla. That's what we say. Everyone's the same, man. Everyone's a really good skater. Can shoot the puck. Everybody's a good passer. Everybody's in great shape. There's been so much development from the nutrition side and the training side and the fundamental skills, and there's always skills camps for kids and the development and all this. It's like, you know what? It's nice to have somebody just go crack someone once in a while, you know?
Yeah.
And that is still an
Yeah.
element of what makes the game interesting. And
That's
that's what's going to start to sell the game, in my opinion, down the road. It's going to be those guys that come in and have a little bit of that, you know?
I was at who did the Spits play this last Sunday?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, who was it? It was like a SpongeBob game or something. You know,
I saw the jerseys. Yeah. I don't remember the team.
What was the team? I think it was it might have been a U.S. team or no, Mississauga. It was Mississauga. There was a fight.
Nice.
I say this to everybody, and when people argue that fighting shouldn't be in the sport, and you know, I do feel that hockey is unique because like you don't really see fighting in any other sports.
Right.
Like you'll see you'll see it in baseball once in a while, right?
Yep.
When a pitcher does something stupid or whatever. But like fighting, it's like an acceptable thing in the sport and it's part of the sport. I would even argue it's maybe one of the reasons why hockey even gained popularity. But I was at that game, a fight broke out. You know, the Spits, they got a goal. You know, everybody went nuts. But when that fight broke out, like the level of just like exhilaration and cheering and just nuttiness from the crowd, it's next level.
Yeah,
people want to see it. We're at the end of the day, you're taking something out of the game that is absolutely what people want and they want to see it. I don't know again, sure, there's probably a motive there where they want to develop skill and they want the game faster. They want it, bigger, faster, whatever. They want to see more action, more goals, this and that. But I'm telling you, man, like when a big hit happens, like it's like an instinctive thing in us that we want to see that.
I was just gonna say that
we want to see that, right? Like at the end of the day, we're animals, and we want to see that, right? And there's something about it when that happens, man. People just go crazy. And it's funny. I was watching like I can't remember how I came across it, but I came across like the 10 biggest hits, in the NHL or maybe in hockey in general, or I can't remember what it was. There was some sort of list of hits. Every single one of those hits would be a 5 with a game. Oh yeah, like no question these days. Like, and it wasn't even that long ago. And I don't know. Like, there's a couple questions with that, right? I don't know why you'd want to take that element out of the game. And then also, even, transitioning into this question, even what's your take on, I'm starting to see a lot of, you'll see, okay, Matt Rempe's a perfect example. Guy 6'7", he hits a guy that's 6 feet. He's probably getting a shoulder to the head. You know what I mean? Or he's probably like, it's going to happen. Right. So how do you call that? Yeah. Because if you put a 6'7" versus 6'7" or a 6 foot versus a 6 foot, against each other, it's probably not a penalty. Right. But because the guy is bigger, it's a penalty. And then also, what happens when you have the puck? Typically, when you have the puck, you're crouched over a little bit. You're leaning into it a little bit. Your stride, this and that. Typically, what happens when you're kind of lining up some guy for a hit? You're crouched, but you're not as crouched as the guy with the puck. Yeah. And like so how do you actually effectively deal with that? Yeah. I don't know how I feel about all that.
Yeah, well, I think 2 points. One would be the nice thing about having the toughness in the sport. And just to be clear, if it was the other way and it was only goons playing, I'd be advocating for more skill in the game. Sure, yeah. So it's not like I'm just saying, hey guys, let's have a free for all. Because I love the skill. I'm the first guy to. Yeah. But the one thing is, it's the great equalizer in hockey, because if we didn't have that, then it's just going to be the best skater wins. The fastest skater wins. That's what the game would be, And now, and you get guys that can do these other things, and now they can play, and it just fundamentally makes the game more interesting, and that's why I like it. But aside from that, when we're talking about the guys, bigger guys hitting smaller guys, things like that, how do you call that? This is where I cut the refs a lot of slack, because if you don't make a black and white rule, then now things are up for interpretation. And when you're trying to make a split-second decision, like I train a guy that's a ref, and he's AHL East Coast referee. Okay. And I ask him, and we had one of our guys is an NHL ref too, and we've talked about this before. I'm like, how are you making these split-second calls? And he says you get accustomed to the speed of the game, number one, but then you just have to be okay with the fact that you're going to make a mistake. You're going to make a mistake. So we really only have two options. You either say anything that touches anyone's head is a penalty.
Got it.
And now it's like, you guys know this is the rule. So if you hit a guy in the head, it's a penalty. So that's option one. And then option two, which is my preferred option, is that you let there be human error in the game. Gotcha. And I like that because how robotic of a game do we want, you know? Yeah. So for me, I like that there's mistakes. I like that guys, like, fans will go crazy because it was the wrong call.
It gets people fired
up.
It's
part of the deal.
It's emotional. Like, it gets people. I agree with you,
and
man.
like, you know, if it's a huge thing that costs the game, normally you can review those plays. Right? But if it's a questionable hit and the ref made a call, good or bad, it's like, this is part of the game, man. It's like the ref's got to make a call, and it is what it is. And there's another thing where I've realized, like, on the bench too, where it's nice to be disconnected, where I'm not so emotionally involved in the game anymore. I'm just actually being a coach. I can watch and I'll see maybe we got a wrong call and the guys on the bench go nuts. And I'm just sitting and I'm just like, guys, like, he already called it. It's done.
Yeah,
it's
maintain
done.
Your emotions.
But for selling the game purposes, like, let the fans go crazy, man. Like, let it happen, right?
Emotional branding at its finest,
exactly.
Man. Like, get people riled up and get them, like, emotionally reactive to what's happening. No, I love that. That's super interesting. Yeah. How do you feel about, do you feel that there's an element of, how can I explain this? Do you feel that because of, you know, the roughness and the fighting has been taken out of the game, there's a lack of it policing itself to some extent? Do you feel like that's happening? Do you feel like, so obviously ever since, you know, taking over BioSteel, I've been watching hockey quite a bit more. You know, BioSteel has bench rights to every NHL, you know, team, and you know, when it's nationally televised and things like that. So naturally, I've been brought back into the hockey community, like, overnight heavy, right? So I've noticed it, and from, like, the hiatus of me being, you know, big into it, then taking a big break because of, you know, business and getting involved in you know, Canadian Protein and real estate to a heavy extent, I naturally got taken out of it. But now I'm being brought into it, and it's a very different game. And I see a lot of things that happen where, you know, I remember watching, and I see now where if that happened, that guy is going to have to answer to it. And I don't see the same reaction anymore, right? So I wonder if, do you see from back in the day, or do you see now, you know, more cheap shots, more questionable things happening because there's no McSorley, or there's, you know, and at the same time too, there's also something to be said for something like that. Does that allow, you know, the argument is, you know, would Gretzky be considered the great one without McSorley, right? So like, what's your interpretation of how the game has changed with respect to that, where, you know, because the game is not policing itself to the same extent as it was before, is it even more dangerous of a game?
Yeah, I think it's a hard question, because I think there's an evolution that happens. So I think initially when they first make these rule changes, like, I'll use the OHL for example. There used to be you could fight as much as you want, and you'd have a guy on your team that had 35 fights.
Oh, wow.
Now it's 3 and you start getting suspended. So already, just by doing that, now you have to think about that if you're a guy that's capable of fighting. So when I played junior, you were tossed from the game if you fought anyways. So that was always looming in your head. Like, if I get in a fight, I'm done for the game, which sucks. When I played it in college, there was, you fight, you're out and probably suspended. And it's only a 30-game season. So if you get a 3-game suspension, it's like, that's actually significant, you know, in a third. Yeah, right. So there's that element. Now, when they first make the rule changes, what I notice is some of what you're saying is so now the guys that are tough are still there, but now there's rules. So you get the little squirmy kid that wants to run around sticking guys and this, and the big guy can't do anything because now the rule has changed.
Gotcha.
But over time, it just self-selects to phase out tough players, because now there's not as much room for them on the team.
Yeah.
So you don't have the guy that is going to be, jumping and trying to get in fights all the time. And then fundamentally, the kids that run around looking for cheap shots, there's just not that many of them anymore, because the toughness element is just being removed from the game in general. So in that kind of transient phase when they first make the rule changes, I would notice some of that. I think that was more apparent then. But over time, I just see like there's just not a lot of that going on. I think a lot of the cheap shot stuff that I notice is frequently actually an accident. Like it's actually like a guy that it was an icing and they went in, or a guy clipped a guy by accident, or a guy he slipped his knee out and went and ended up knee on knee.
Gotcha.
It doesn't seem as purposeful.
I see.
Because I feel like we're self-selecting to get the aggressive kids out of it almost.
Gotcha.
Because there's not, that draw isn't there. Otherwise you're in the box the whole game because everything's a penalty kind of thing, right?
So you're saying like the scrappier kids are also the more cheap shot.
Yeah, like in general,
well.
you get the exception. Obviously, like Brad Marchand's my favorite guy to use as an example, right? Where he's actually an unreal player, but he has that bit to him.
Yeah.
Steve Ott was another guy. Like he was a pest kind of guy.
Interesting.
Cal Clutterbuck was a guy that was like that too. So these guys that they're around and they'll get you with a cheap one here and there. And but I don't see it as much now as maybe in that transient phase when they first were making the rule changes.
Interesting.
I don't see it as much now. And I don't think it's as much of a thing in the NHL either, because I think there is still guys that can go take care of business. Like every team kind of has one that'll do something.
Yeah.
So
willing to throw down.
Yeah, and they don't have as much they don't have fighting limits on guys and stuff. So there still is a door for it to be open. But I just feel like it's fundamentally not as tough of a game anymore. So that guys they don't want to get in the mess. They don't want to face wash a guy or cheap shot a guy or whatever. I just think that part of it's, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because you don't want guys getting cheap shot and stuff like that. So I think it's a little bit of both, I guess, to answer the question.
Interesting.
Yeah. How'd you like those SpongeBob jerseys?
Dude, I like, listen, I will say this. Okay, before this, I'll get into this. The one thing that I wish hockey had was more flashy shit.
Yeah.
I want to see, remember Marner skates for the last year's All-Star game?
Yeah.
Dude, I love those.
Yeah.
And like even those SpongeBob jerseys from the Spits, like I love it.
Yeah.
Even I didn't see it personally, but somebody took a picture of it. Like I got a flame tattoo on my my right leg here.
Yeah.
And because I like driving cars and whatever, so I was like, I can't get it on my forearm already, so I'll get it on my leg, whatever. And it's my gas pedal leg, so I thought it was funny. Yeah. Anyways, the socks were like flames and the jerseys were like, I think that's so sick.
Yeah.
Like I and that's the one thing that I feel is lacking so much in hockey. And I don't know if, and again, maybe it's not the right move because maybe hockey isn't that sport for it. But I want to see like cool skates. And I want to see, flashier jerseys and like that roller hockay does that really well.
Yeah.
Like roller hockey is like
do.
outrageously flashy, and I love it. I think it's so sick.
Yeah.
And I actually tweeted it the other day. I was like, what happened to the black blade holders? They're all white.
Yeah.
Do you even like? And then somebody was like, oh, because it's a uniform requirement. You're not allowed to have.
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
But like, can you think of anybody that rocks black blade holders anymore?
No.
Like,
Well, it's like when Ovechkin came in with the tinted visor. It's just something that gets eyes. It just gets attention. So are you thinking of it more from the business perspective, of like the marketing perspective of the game, or is it just you personally enjoy seeing that?
Yeah,
kind of
I
stuff?
think it's cool, man. Like, it's a little bit more personalized. Like, and now it's like, oh wow, like Bauer's got like this cool gradient of blue, and I'm like, okay,
it's
like
blue.
It's not like that. Like, wow,
it's
that's
blue.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand.
I know.
I don't understand where the craziness
it's funny.
is.
It's funny you said that. I remember as a kid,
know?
I'd play. I had a Nintendo GameCube, and I remember playing like NHL whatever version, and you could create a team, and so you could make uniforms.
Okay.
And I remember it was exactly that. I would use I would have some like neon green jersey with like the old school brown leather gloves, like some
That's
ridiculous
so sick.
contrast.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was sick. My guy always had a tinted visor. It was
I
like
totally agree,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I don't understand. And I get it. Like, I also get that it's not for everybody, right? You know, you're gonna get these.
Oh yeah, if you talk to like
oh,
Andy,
yeah.
he's like, it's not hockey.
Yeah,
I don't want,
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't disagree,
Yeah.
but I think it's cool to throw that in the mix a little bit, or at least like, you know, turn it up a notch with your boots here. You know what I mean? Like, do something, like do something interesting. Because I rocked black blade holders back in the day with my Bauer 4000s. And I thought it was awesome.
Yeah,
like it was just, it was different a little bit, right? And I also wasn't the only one, right? You know, and I'd put a ring of, you know, blue tape or something. It was like crazy. You know what I mean? But like, it was just, it was a, you know, just an element of differentiating a little bit more, right?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and even you know, growing up, you know, Fedorov and his Nike skates.
Oh yeah,
Those were like so sick.
Yeah,
like I
those
remember
were
that.
sweet.
And I had Megas. Like I also, before my Bauer, I had Mega skates, and they like the heel where it was wrapped in white.
Yeah,
like
the white boots, man. I still remember.
Yeah,
them,
like it was so cool, man. And even now I've got Graph. I can't remember the model of Graph, but the whole back of it is silver. It just, and that's not crazy.
No.
But it's just like it's
something.
different than black.
Yeah.
So like I don't understand, like, if anybody watching this can tell me why no one has the black blade holders anymore, or at least something. You watch hockey, it's all white.
Yeah.
And then as soon as like, and remember Yager.
Yeah.
They did, what did they retire his jersey in Pittsburgh?
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
68,
Yeah. So I remember watching that, and they were playing highlights of him playing back in the day.
Jofa.
Yeah. And the Jofa helmet. Oh my God, brutal.
Yeah.
I remember playing back in the day, and like, man, if you wore one of them fucking things back in the, like, it was game over for you.
Yeah.
But I remember watching highlights of him, and he had black blade holders.
Yeah.
And it just, even something as small as that, it just stood out.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And but if anybody watching this actually knows why you don't see them in the NHL anymore, I would love to know.
It could be a uniform thing, because I know a lot of teams have to wear this or they have to use this certain thing, and then individual players can get. I think this is true. This might be wrong, but they can get in their contract, because if you have a personal deal with CCM, but
Sure,
your
yeah.
team is Bauer, you can use a CCM stick,
Gotcha.
or something like that.
Yeah,
So it could be
yeah.
something like kind of uniform policy
But,
sort
like,
of thing.
fuck,
But
man, like, just throw something a little different into
Yeah.
the mix. That's my opinion. I don't know. Like, even just, I don't know, spray paint the shit. I don't know.
It
Like,
seems like the Winter Classic. It seems like that's where they try to do a little bit of that, where they get
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
retro jerseys, or they get like different colored buckets or gloves or something like that. But it is pretty mild still. Yeah.
dude, I love the natural brown look, like
Yeah, I
the
know.
natural
I know.
leather brown.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
man,
sweet.
that's so sick. When
Yeah.
you have like that cool kind of like modern twist on a retro jersey, and then like the old school looking leather.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
especially with like all the new, like, man, it's unbelievable to me. Like when I watch goalie highlights, especially, or I see them or whatever, and going back to the days where like the butterflies like weren't really a thing.
Yeah. Stand up style.
Yeah, you're kind of like standing up, kicking it out, and like, and then seeing now when a goalie drops down and does a butterfly, it's like literally a box. Like they fall on their pad. There's a pad on their knee,
Yeah.
and it's just like a 1 foot like just like wall.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know.
It's unbelievable how far the equipment has even gone and come, and it's wild to see that type of stuff.